This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Locked On Falcons host Aaron Freeman and 11 Alive anchor Maria Martin. Falcons analyst Travis Davis will be back with us next week. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And our Atlanta Football Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we've been talking about a lot of the new guys that we want to see an uptick with on defense. But what about one of the guys who may be in year 3 we need to see something from? We will talk about that. Also, we'll talk about any guys not named, I don't know, Jalon Walker, James Pearce Jr., Xavier Watts, who could have a breakout season in 2025 indeed. And if Aaron, Maria, Tenitra, and Jarvis, if he was here, had a wish list of where they could go and what they could do for a special time coming up for these Falcons, where would it be? We'll talk about that. But first, let's talk about the fact that a big trade Wednesday, kind of triggered folks about what happened 2 weeks ago. So Maria, since you have your commemorative hat on from what happened 2 weeks ago, NFL Draft 2025, let's start with you, because a trade that, I don't know, it depends on what side of the fence you're on with the Steelers, was shocking to some and relieving to others. The Dallas Cowboys got a second wide receiver in George Pickens. The Pittsburgh Steelers said the Pickens era for them is over. So the trade went such that Dallas would get a 2026 a trade Wednesday that will send Pickens to Dallas, or sent Pickens to Dallas for a 2026 third rounder. Cowboys send a 2027 fifth rounder to the Steelers, get back a 27 sixth round pick. And I don't know, for me, Maria, first, it's interesting that people are still having this conversation about the James Pearce Jr. trade. I don't see what the big deal is. I thought it was the right level of aggression or aggressiveness for what the Falcons needed. But some people are still triggered by things like what happened yesterday. It triggers them back to Pierce. Do you feel like that was a desperation move for Terry Fontenot? Or do you see it as no, it's more strategic than desperation in terms of Terry Fontenot understanding what he needed to do to save his job?
I think it depends on how you define desperation in the NFL. I truly do. Because to me, that wasn't desperate. It was necessary. And I think that those are two different things. Terry Fontenot, we've been begging for him to make any type of aggressive move in the NFL draft, since he's been here in Atlanta. And to me, this was aggressive. He went back up into the first round to get another position need that you need. You get 2 of them in the first round. That's what everybody asked for. And then when he did it, everyone was like, wait a second, why would you do that? And so I don't understand where the confusion came from. I think maybe just because James Pearce Jr. wasn't as proven or as enticing to some Falcons fans, perhaps. But he really excited a lot of these Falcons coaches, specifically at the combine. His speed, his length, his ability to be pretty versatile. I think not as versatile as Jalon, but to a degree, you can kind of get him to do what you want him to do. They love him. They love him so much. They traded back up into the first round to get him. And he's the kind of player that you needed to do extra homework on, and they did that. So, no, I don't think it was desperate. I genuinely think that this is something that Terry Fontenot had to do, especially when we talk about the pressure that we all believe that he's under in this year. You have to make a move like this to essentially revitalize a side of the football that's been depleted for years and years and years of this franchise. And the way that you do that is you do it through the draft, as we've been talking about for months now. And finally, we see him do it. The question now stands, can James Pearce Jr. come in and be an immediate impact? Because that's what they're going to need him to be.
Yeah, and on one of your more recent Sports Extras, Maria, you had John Abraham join for a minute, and even Abe was excited that Abe isn't going to be the number one person in the conversation about a Falcons pass rush.
He was fired up about that.
He really was. That's how serious this is, Aaron, because everybody knows that by hook or by crook, the Falcons had to go defense. That was your free guarantee. They did it, and they did it over and over and over again. I felt like, I think this entirety of our football party, including Tori extended from our Monday show, felt like aggressiveness was where they needed to go. And you couldn't just settle on one player and say, okay, we got Jalon Walker, we got our edge guy, we got our pass rusher, let's go, we're good. You had to keep going. You had to keep going because you're looking to shore up every aspect of every position on the defensive front who could affect the quarterback. So for you, I know for me, like I said, I don't get it. This is the type of move that Fontenot had to make. I didn't see it as desperation. I saw it as understanding the assignment and actually going through with the assignment. But what about you? I mean, did you feel like Terry making the decision to trade back into the first round with the Rams to get that number 26 was a bit much for James Pearce Jr.?
I mean, it depends on the day, right? In terms of what it is. Like, I think it's very clear that the Falcons really coveted James Pearce Jr.
Yes.
That to the point that they were very willing to take him at 15, but they had to stay sort of true to their board because they had Jalon Walker rated higher. And they were like, okay, we were all sort of planning. We thought the way that this draft would go was James Pearce would be our pick at 15. And so they were kind of trying to figure it out. But then ultimately, like, we can't pass on the value of Jalon Walker, but they still wanted to get James Pearce. And I think, you know, what's interesting about the Falcons is that they have generally been very aggressive when it comes to trading up early in the draft under Terry Fontenot. And I guess for me, the part that is always fascinating to me is like Terry Fontenot coming from that Saints organization that, you know, is also pretty aggressive when it comes to trading up. Mickey Loomis, I think the stat was like, has not traded down in the draft since like 2007 or something like that. Mm-hmm. But also like that Saints organization is also very aggressive when it comes to free agency. And like that's the one element of Terry Fontenot that he hasn't really taken from that New Orleans Saints organization, which is sort of the idea of like, we're not going to spend money. And sometimes they do, obviously, you know, Kirk Cousins in the 23 offseason. But for the most part, the Falcons are not a team that has been that aggressive with moving money around to try to improve the roster, but they have been very aggressive. And it's just interesting for me watching the sort of more conservative approach in free agency during the month of March to get that more aggressive approach in April. Initially, it took a while for me to sort of wrap my head around. It's like, why, if we're calling this desperation, if we're calling it pressure to win, why aren't you being consistently aggressive throughout the entire process? But it's very clear that the Falcons have a conviction on James Pearce. And I think ultimately the controversy surrounding him is he's a much more polarizing player than the Falcons perceive him to be. And I think this is, you know, not to make it about Michael Penix or whatever, but like this was the gist of the Michael Penix conversation because Michael Penix was not universally beloved as a quarterback prospect compared to some of the other guys at the top of the draft. And so when the Falcons took him, everybody was like, I can't believe the Falcons did this. And, you know, so far it's going in the right direction. We'll see how it all plays out this upcoming season with Michael Penix. But I think that's kind of the gist of the James Pearce conversation, which is he's not a universally beloved prospect compared to some of the other top pass rushers that a lot of people did not expect James Pearce to go in round one because of all the quote unquote maturity concerns that he had. And I think that's what fuels a lot of the controversy, if that's what you want to call it, with the Falcons trade up, where the Falcons are saying, hey, we had conviction on this guy. We believe in this guy. And, you know, the knock against the Falcons is so far their conviction on certain guys hasn't really paid off to them in a major way. And so I think that's where a lot of the question marks come. It's like, okay, is it going to be different this time? So I think the team is moving in the right direction to the point where you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but up to this point, because they haven't been able to translate that draft day conviction into wins quite yet, it's hard to go fully there. And I think that's where a lot of the concerns, I know for me, come from when it comes to this trade up.
Yeah, I mean, can I jump in, Tenitra, real quick? Yeah. I think you make a really good point, because if it was proven in these conviction, like one of the things that's so important in the NFL is if you're convicted in somebody and you're convicted in a player and you think that they could change the trajectory of your franchise or one side of the ball, like you better go in 110%. Like if you're that convicted, and the Falcons, to their credit, they've done that with a couple of different guys. But I think Aaron makes such a good point here, is that there's still the question mark, even by Michael Penix Jr.'s name. We all think that he's great. We all think in the sample size that he played those 3 games at the end of the year, we thought that was okay, decent enough to where maybe that pick is going to work out. And the coaches, we talked to them last week, they're all just so high on Mike, and that's great. You should be, because of what happened in the draft. But there still is the question mark, because he hasn't taken you to the playoffs. He hasn't changed the way that the franchise operates. He hasn't been given that opportunity. So until that's proven, there is just kind of this overwhelming, all right, you guys have been convicted in these players. You've taken them high when everybody's like, what are you doing? Bijan Robinson, if you remember, was even one of those as well. Everyone was pretty convicted that he was a very good running back, but taking him as high as the Falcons did, that was a head scratcher for a lot of teams. And so the Falcons under Terry Fontenot have done that quite a few times. To me, the maturity thing with James Pearce Jr. is not totally fair. Now, again, I didn't coach him. I wasn't around him as a teammate. But I've talked to some of the coaches that have been around James Pearce Jr. during his college days, and they even told me, they agree with me. It's not completely fair. While there are character issues, that's not his entire sense of person and player. And so if the Falcons believe that they can get in touch with him a little bit deeper, why not? And honestly, taking a guy like Jalon Walker in front of James, I hope, is a motivating factor for James to be like, all right, whatever was going on in college when I was a little bit younger, let's get it together, because this guy, Jalon Walker, clearly has it all together.
Yeah, I think that was the point that I wanted to kind of sit on as well, Maria, because Aaron, you make the great point about it's reputation, right? And a lot of it, unfortunately, because we were even talking about that, all of these little niche type things that are so Falcony, like the thing that happened with Jax Ulbrich. It's like, okay, can we just focus on the draft and what happened with the picks? But no, we couldn't, because that wouldn't be Falcony if we were able to just focus on the business aspect of what happened during this draft. But also, in addition to the question marks that we still have about Michael Penix Jr., I think in certain positions, there's a question mark. Because if the Falcons had taken a chance on an offensive player, now hear me out on this one. If the Falcons had taken a chance to trade back into the first round for an offensive player, everybody would have been up in arms, because it's like, how dare you? You still need defense, but you can trust them on offense, because they did have, a good draft with a Drake London who's panning out, with a Bijan Robinson, a Tyler. Like, you can look across the entirety pretty much of that offense and say they do that well. But for them to take a chance on a defensive player, they haven't shown that. I mean, I was just kind of looking through like certain draft picks with certain teams. And even if you didn't like that pick for that team, that team picks well. So that Will Campbell, for example, as an O tackle out of LSU, going to the Patriots, that's pretty much money, right? That should work out fairly well. Or you look at even that next pick, a Mason Graham going to the Browns, them picking a D tackle. Yeah, we're going to give them that. If that was, a move that they made in lieu of picking a Travis Hunter. I think when it comes to the Falcons and making a move that sort of is aggressive when it comes to a defensive player where they have been middling at best and sometimes missed the mark, my mind goes back. And of course, this is pre-Terry Fontenot, but the body of work is beyond Terry, if we're being honest about edge rushers or anyone who can affect the passer. My mind quickly went to Takk McKinley, right? And so as, one of the more recent examples of, that didn't work out with one of the guys that you went after early in the draft. So I think you guys are onto something as far as it depends. It wasn't truly desperate, I guess, in the truest sense of the word, but you could see where that would be desperation or some question marks because of the Falcons' history as it relates to doing things like this and whether or not it actually pans out. And then you kind of say to yourself, if that's the case, do I look at a Walker, a Pierce, or even a Billy Bowman and a Xavier Watts guys as those kinds of players who, hey, you went up and you got them, or you took a chance on them. So, I mean, Maria, are you feeling like a lot of fans like, yeah, they better be starters. They better do something significant day one?
I mean, do I feel like the fans feel that way? Yes. Do I feel like I feel like that? Not necessarily. I mean, I do believe that there's starters in this draft class. I do. And like immediate starters. And I think that the coaches feel very convicted in that as well. Jalon Walker, I'm so excited to see what exactly their plan is for him, because they've said and they've verbalized the versatility of Jalon is the attractive piece to him, right? But you don't want to overwhelm him in his rookie year when you're asking him to do so many things. So they're going to try to get him to do one thing and hone in on that specifically, and then morph him into a couple of different things. So Jalon is the more enticing one to me, just because I don't really know exactly what their plan is going to be for him. James Pearce Jr., I think their plan is for him to immediately start. I think both of those guys in your mind should be immediate starter. When it comes to Xavier Watts and Billy, I think that the coaches believe that one of those guys is a bit more starter ready than you would think that they would be. And even in talking to everybody, they were all surprised, just as I was, that Xavier was there in the third round. They all graded him a lot higher than the third round. They look at this as like such a great opportunity to get a guy as low as they did, the third round, when they graded him way higher than that. You know, he's a guy that I think could come in and have an immediate impact, probably more so than people believe. The interceptions over the course of 2 years, the 13 interceptions over the course of 2 years, people don't want to give too much credit for that, but the Falcons coaches are fired up about the fact that this guy can do stuff like that. And you need somebody on the secondary who can come in and really make an immediate impact. That was the goal of their draft. I think all of the goals that they had coming in are going to be met with some of these rookies. Billy may have a little bit more of a learning curve. And again, all of them do. It's not like these guys are going to change the defense overnight. You would love for that to happen. That's probably not going to happen. But I do think that a few of these guys are a little more starter ready than people probably believe going in.
Yeah, whether they start, is always a nebulous term. It's like, are you out there for the first snap of the game? Technically, is who starts the game, right? But I think ultimately all four of these guys on defense will have roles on this defense this year and will be expected to be significant contributors, whether that's guys like Walker and Pearce on passing downs, whether that's Bowman in that nickel role, whether, Xavier Watts is the number 2 safety next to Jesse Bates or the number 3 safety behind Jordan Fuller. They will, if that's the case, then I think the Falcons will definitely be throwing out a 3 safety look in some dime defense with 6 DBs on the field, where you'll see both Billy Bowman and Xavier Watts on the field. So I think all of these guys will absolutely be expected to contribute, whether or not we're sitting here at the end of the season and saying these guys played 800 to 1,000 snaps this season that you typically associate to guys that are every down starters or whatever. I think remains to be seen. I don't expect the Falcons to envision any of those guys or desiring any of those guys to play that many snaps, because it probably means players got injured or certain veteran players did not live up to expectations and all that sort of thing. So I think all of these guys will definitely have roles this season, will be contributors this season, something that we did not see from the 24 draft class. So I think that is where you get excited about this draft class, where it's like all these guys are set up for success to be able to come in and carve out a role for the football team. But in terms of actually being starters, I think, I would probably, like Maria, maybe pump the brakes on a little bit on that.
Yeah. And there's a guy from the 2023 draft class that we would say, we're not sure whether he'll be a starter, but we certainly hope this is a year that we could see him reach his full potential. We'll talk about that upon further review. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky-high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. So you can do that with sports. You can get those discounts with concerts, with comedy, as well as with theater, and the all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see, you pay. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today for last-minute tickets at lowest prices guaranteed. So, Aaron, we talked earlier this week on our Monday Football Party about Nate Ollie, of course, the D-line coach for the Falcons, who oftentimes and I won't say he forgets, but maybe a guy who gets lost in the shuffle of the conversation from Nate Ollie and Zach Harrison. Like, we didn't even really get to deep dive on Zach Harrison earlier in the week, but he was one of the guys that Ollie talked about, in addition to, of course, talking a little bit about what he would do with Ruke Orhorhoro and Brandon Dorlus in particular. That's kind of who we talked about earlier. But we look back at a guy in Zach Harrison who, hey, he's a big edge guy, attack style. We know the GTFO, I think, is how that conversation got with what Nate Ollie is looking for. But do you think that maybe with a guy like, and I say with a guy like Nate Ollie for Zach Harrison, maybe this is the guy that can finally not just bring out his full potential, but also help the Falcons defense to be able to take advantage of that on a consistent basis?
I hope so. Yeah, I think so. I think Zach Harrison is one of those players that I think, as you're saying, he kind of goes under the radar a little bit. We've seen in both of his first 2 seasons in the NFL that, in the month of December, he really starts to come alive. And so the hope is that now in year 3, he can kind of put together a full season of December, so that December is in September all the way through December and hopefully into January and whatnot. And so I think their plan for Zach Harrison, moving him back out to the edge, particularly on early downs, I think makes a ton of sense. We've seen Nate Ollie have a lot of success with a similar type of player in Dayo Odeyingbo when he was with the Colts, who just got paid by the Chicago Bears, but basically played a very similar role where on early downs he would be that big edge, and then kick inside and be an impact pass rusher. And Harrison has all the talent in the world. That's why he was a 5-star recruit at Ohio State. It's why they build him, at least in Columbus, as he's the next in line with, Nick Bosa and Chase Young. He's going to be that next guy. And he didn't quite live up to that because he's not quite built the same way that those guys are. He's just a big, long, powerful guy, and those guys are a little bit more bendy. They're a little bit more finesse, a little bit more explosive. Not to say that Zach Harrison isn't that, but I think year 3 now for him is the perfect opportunity for it to all come together. We've talked about these sort of edges that the Falcons have in Jalon Walker, James Pearce. They're not the biggest guys in the world, newsflash. I guess if people haven't figured that out. And so you do wonder a little bit, will they be able to hold up against the run to the same degree that they did in the college level, going up against a significantly better level of competition at the NFL level? These are all grown men that, they all put in the work and the time and the effort and whatnot. And, when you're giving up, 70 pounds of mass to an offensive tackle, to a guy that is on his business, that can be an issue for the team. And so getting a guy out there that, like Zach Harrison, that has the size that he has, whether he's still going to be 290 or closer to 280 or whatever he is at this point in time, with his type of strength and power, I think will be a major asset for this team in the run game. And then I think getting to the Nate Ollie of it all, that GTFO, as you say,
he said that.
Yeah, yes. I want to add TB to that because, GTFO means a little bit different to different people. GTFO, TB, get off the ball, to translate. And so I think that element that Nate Ollie is bringing to Zach Harrison, particularly if they're going to kick him inside at times to use that speed so that, Jalon Walker and James Pearce can do their edge stuff on passing downs. I think that is really where Zach Harrison has a lot of room to grow and to blossom this year. And he's probably not going to be the ace pass rusher for the Falcons, but if we can get some of the flashes that we've seen late in the season consistently throughout the rest of the season, I do think he'll be quietly sort of a major contributor for this defense moving forward.
Yeah, and Maria, my mind went to this as well as Free was talking about what we can expect from Zach Harrison and kind of how we saw the flashes, especially later in the season, right? I think too, we always talk about on the offensive side of the ball, particularly quarterbacks, but on the offensive side of the ball, how players are impacted by the loss of an offensive coordinator or having to go through 2, 3, 4 offensive coordinators in their career. Well, that's where Zach Harrison is. Let's think about this. He comes in with an aggressive guy like a Ryan Nielsen as his DC, right? And then he also has a Calais Campbell right there to be able to tutor him like real time, really mentor him real time. And then, and so you see him kind of come out of the gates looking like he's going to have the goods. And he has 18 solo tackles. He has 3 sacks, and he's looking like he's going to be that guy. And then all of a sudden in 24, you kind of see a regression down to 6 solo tackles and you see him just one sack. And I kind of think like maybe this will be sort of a resurgence for him because he'll have the opportunity to be under, and granted, we're talking D-line coach here with Nate Ollie, but also a Jeff Ulbrich, guys who are more aggressive, if you will, about getting after the ball and just letting a raw talent like Zach Harrison, to Free's point, a guy who's just long and big, may not necessarily have all the tools in the toolkit of like a Bosa, but has all of that raw athletic skill. Maybe this is how he gets back to being the Zach Harrison that we saw, because for starters, he has a D-line coach in Nate Ollie and a DC and Jeff Ulbrich who are just going to let him eat.
Yeah, I mean, you said the word quiet earlier, and that is not the first adjective I think of when I think of Nate Ollie or Jeff Ulbrich. And if you remember back to Ryan Nielsen's days, and the players were so fired up about him because he would come into meetings like roaring, hooping and hollering, and they loved that. And it really was different. And whereas you have Jimmy Lake, who is a first-time NFL defensive coordinator, kind of trying to figure it out on the fly, which is not totally fair because it's not like this is completely new to him. But in the NFL, it was. It was his first time as a coordinator. And so then you have a Zach Harrison who's coming off his rookie year with a guy who knew what he was doing and was very convicted in what he was doing, switching to a different defensive scheme and a different way of doing things. That can be confusing for a player when he too is trying to figure out what's my role, what's my identity, not only in the defense, but in the NFL. So I mean, I think this can pay dividends for him. Nate Ollie, as Aaron had mentioned, he's got a proven track record on the defensive line, which I think is very important. And the way that he speaks is exactly the kind of thing that Raw and Terry are looking for. Get off the ball, he said about 75 times in the 2 minutes that we were with him. And pass rush, pass rush, pass rush. He said it 3 times every single time he said it. And, that is enticing for a team that has been lacking that, as I had mentioned earlier. So I think Nate Ollie knows what he's doing. When it comes to Zach Harrison, we don't know what that looks like because we've not actually physically seen it yet. But just in the way that he talks about him, the way he's excited about both Zach and Brandon, he has a plan for those guys. And that's all we've been asking for, is have a plan and be convicted in your plan and what you're going to ask them to do. Zach Harrison, when he was a college prospect, he was 20 pounds lighter than he is now. He's beefed up. He is a big defensive end, which is the picture and what exactly Nate Ollie wants him to do. I feel like that is the plan. He even verbalized that. I think that this could be kind of a coming out party for Zach Harrison because you're not going to ask him to do stuff he can't do, which I feel like at times he's been asked to do that in previous defenses. Now they have a plan. And Jeff Ulbrich and Nate Ollie both are loud guys who know what they're doing. This can only pay dividends for Zach Harrison. And this is not necessarily comparable, but we think about this a lot with Kyle Pitts and that he's been with so many different coordinators and so many different quarterbacks. And people are like, oh, maybe this is the issue. And I know we're not talking about this today, but they also have a plan for him. And so I think that, yes, it does affect a player to go from defensive scheme to defensive scheme. The only thing that I could see being maybe puzzling to Zach is this is going to be more of a metamorphosis type defense, if you want to call it that. Like it's going to be a little interchanging and they're going to try to get creative without doing too much. I think that's going to be very good for Zach. And I think that this is going to be a year where we start to say, all right, maybe he's put all the pieces together and it won't just be Zach. I think the coaches are definitely going to help him figure out exactly what that means.
Yeah. And I think too, that Maria, if we see Zach with that slow start, maybe for the first week or for the second week, because he is trying to understand exactly how he fits in with multiples or actually to execute on that offense that defense that Jeff Ulbrich is installing. Oh, we'll take that in a heartbeat. As long as it's just for a week or two, where we can see like, okay, shades of it. He's getting there, but ultimately he gets there and he gets there for like 15 of the 17 weeks. Yeah. Like nobody is complaining about that at all, because that's the kind of production that we'll take. If it looks anything like it looked in 2023 plus, yeah, absolutely. We'll take that. But I do think that there's something to be said about, hey, he had that style with Ryan Nielsen, then didn't have that style with Jimmy Lake. He's getting that style back with Nate Ollie and with Jeff Ulbrich. I think that's going to pay some big dividends for him, and would love to see him actually break out in a major way for the Falcons, because certainly we know that the potential is there. But speaking of potential, non-rookies that we need to see a breakout season for, absolutely. We'll talk about that in a moment when we come back. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives business flexibility by connecting with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project on a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. So if you need help with that marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert. If you need to post a job freely and simply, Upwork can help you with that as well. And instead of hiring full-time, those freelancers are going to be affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business effectively. So visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. Again, that's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. So guys, we have talked a lot over this last 2 weeks, of course, now that we're 2 weeks removed from the NFL draft, about what we want to see in this rookie class. But there are some players that we are have our eye on, kind of looking at as well, to say, okay, this is a breakout season. We hope for you. And we really just talked about one of them, Maria, and Zach Harrison, hoping that he can even best what we saw out of him in his rookie season. But give me a name of one or two more players, offensive side of the ball as well, if so, that you want to see have a breakout season, or that player or players needs to have breakout seasons so that the Falcons can be in the win column and we can be having a conversation beyond, say, I don't know, week 18.
I mean, for a personal player who has to have a breakout season, it's Kyle Pitts all day. Like he's the person that we're all looking at. You know, he has to break out this year. Like there is no other excuse for Kyle at this point. But that really wasn't who I was going to pick. But when you said has to, I think personally that my head goes to Kyle. You know, for me, I don't think it's a necessity for this player specifically, but I do believe that he's going to have kind of a breakthrough or eye-catching season. It's Ruke Orhorhoro for me. You know, he's coming off his rookie season he had an ankle injury. We didn't get to see, I think, the full breadth of what Ruke Orhorhoro can do. And I also hate that I have to say his name so many times. I might just call him Ruke O, because when I'm saying it too many times in a row, it's going to get a little messy. But Ruke is so fun. He's so fun to be around. And I don't think that Jimmy Lake really tapped into everything that Ruke can do. Now, granted, rookie season, run defense was, super sketchy last year, as we all know. But I think him as a run defender can pay so many dividends for this defense specifically. And actually, a couple of the different defensive coaches that I've talked to mention Ruke by name. Every time I think about guys or talk about guys with them that are maybe flying under the radar, guys that you feel like will be a great asset in your system, they always name Ruke Orhorhoro as one of them. And so I think that that's someone to really keep your eye on when it comes to the plans that not only Nate Ollie has for him, who he was like fired up, ready to rip his shirt off talking about Ruke, and then also, just every single person on this defense, from a Jerry Gray. Jerry Gray consistently mentions his name. Jeff Ulbrich loves the type of player that Ruke is and truly believes that they have not reached full potential. I would hope not in his second year. The only thing that worries me about Ruke is he had really tied himself to Grady. He really felt like Grady was helping him a lot. In the few conversations that I had with Ruke last year, once he had come back from his ankle injury, he was talking about just how great it was to be around Grady, having a veteran like that lead the way. That's my only concern, is he doesn't really truly have somebody like that, to my knowledge, that he looks at and tries to help him along. That would be my only concern. But man, this is a guy who you put him in the right spots, you let him win in the gaps he's supposed to, and even on early downs, because you're not going to see him a lot on early downs last year.
Yeah.
Maybe you let him do exactly what he's supposed to do. I would think Ruke Orhorhoro is someone that people aren't talking about enough and people should maybe pay attention to a little bit more.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah. I think Maria nailed it with Ruke. I think the Falcons are betting big on Ruke Orhorhoro. And so I think he is one of those players that's poised for a breakout. I think he should probably, nestle up to David Onyemata, because that was the player I compared Ruke Orhorhoro to when I saw the fully formed version of Ruke Orhorhoro, I was like, it probably will look a lot like David Onyemata, which is this super powerful player. So, if he can take some tips from David Onyemata, I think that will also benefit him in Grady's absence. But the player that stands out to me, beyond Kyle Pitts, as Maria put it, as the guy that has to break out this year. But, a player that I also think is not getting enough love, and understandably, given that we just drafted 2 edge rushers. But I think the player that if I was going to bet on anybody on this roster to get 8 or more sacks this season for the Falcons, it would still be Arnold Ebiketie would be my bet at this point in time. I feel like what we saw, the growth for Arnold Ebiketie, that year 3 jump that we saw from him, that we went into the season being like, is this the year that Arnold Ebiketie is going to break out? And he kind of got off to a little bit of a slow start. Then I think kind of had his coming out party in that week 6 matchup against Carolina. And I don't think really ever looked back at that point in time. Yeah. And when this pass rush was humming in the back half of the season, it was mostly Arnold Ebiketie and Kane Ellis that to me were the guys that were consistently getting after the quarterback time and time again. And I feel like with Arnold Ebiketie, if he can continue to make another jump going into year 4, like that's the guy that I would sit here and say that if we're looking at any one player, and I know one of the things that Jeff Ulbricht's defense loves to do with their fronts with that wide 9 is kind of put 3 guys on one side and then one guy on another side that kind of isolate them. They call it an overload front. And that one guy is kind of your ace pass rusher so that you can get him in a more advantageous one-on-one against an offensive tackle where teams feel like they have to slide to the 3-man side because of there's just too many guys on that side. So you get a one-on-one, and you saw in New York that was like Carl Lawson and other guys. And I feel like if I'm expecting anybody to be that guy, at least early in the season, we'll see where Pearce and Walker are by the end of the season. But I think Arnold Ebiketie is probably your best bet to be that specific guy that is sort of that go-to guy that it's 3rd and 7. It's like, let's get this guy singled up. Let's let Arnold Ebiketie use the technical know-how, the speed, the quickness, all that stuff that he has shown flashes of consistently last year. And if we can get more of that, just not flashes, just like consistently winning off the edge, I do think Arnold Ebiketie is one of those guys that just doesn't get enough love just because everybody's so excited about James Pearce and Jalon Walker, understandably. But at the same time, like they have this other young guy that is steadily developing and coming into his own as well in Arnold Ebiketie that I do think people shouldn't sleep on.
Yeah. And I think maybe he even gets, poor thing, bless his heart, he gets overshadowed not just by this year's draft class, but even by last year's draft class, because he's one of those guys who's like, okay. But he's my favorite because he's the only player I ever got right with their draft board ever since I've been covering them. So I'm always like, come on, AK, make it work. But yeah, I like that as a call too. I think that'll be a good look for him. I like Maria's call of the obvious. I'm going to be Captain Obvious with you with that on Kyle Pitts on the offensive side of the ball. But I also be absolutely Captain Obvious with Michael Penix Jr. because you're going to need him to have that kind of breakout type of season. If this show is having a conversation past week 18, it's going to have to be that Michael Penix Jr. is kind of the Captain Obvious breakout person, if you will, or breakout player. But I think too, if it's okay with you guys, I'm going to stretch the definition just a little bit and say my breakout non-rookie would be the guys who are kind of half rookie, half sophomore, for lack of a better term. And that's really the class of 2024, because we really still kind of don't know what they are outside of Michael Penix Jr. and on some level, Ruke Orhorhoro. But the rest of them, pretty much Braylon Trice, Brandon Dorlus, JD Bertrand, like, etc. We need to see what that class is made of, because, I mean, we just really never got an opportunity to see them due to injury. So I think I'm just
except
putting that
JD.
class. Say it again for me.
JD, except for JD, we did see JD quite a bit.
Yeah, and it was, and I guess when I say that, when I look at the snap count, I feel like I didn't see him. So I think for me, that's just the reality of it. Yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, I kind of count him in there as well, because there just wasn't, the sample size was so small. So I feel like maybe the entirety, except those top 2 picks for the class of 2024, probably needs to have a breakout type of show me season. But you also said, Free, you had another person on offense or another player on offense where you're like, hey, it's time for you to step up and make something happen.
Yeah, that pick is Matthew Bergeron. I think Matthew Bergeron has shown improvement, but like, especially given the concerns that the Falcons have at the center position with Ryan News going from Drew Dalman to Ryan Neusel, and lots of questions about, is there going to be a drop off? How much of a drop off that is? Well, if there is a drop off from Drew Dalman and Ryan Nuzul, what can counterbalance that? An improvement at the left guard position, where you're sitting there saying, we're looking at the end of the season and saying, we know Chris Lindstrom's arguably the best guard in football, right? And now if we're having a conversation where it's like, there's no argument, the Falcons have the best combination of guards in the NFL because of the growth that Matthew Bergeron shows, like that takes a lot of pressure off of Ryan Nuzul when you know that you can, mash teams into the dirt on your runs in the interior, or that sort of middle pocket for the quarterback is basically a stone wall, brick wall for Michael Penix. Like Michael Penix, he gets a lot of love for his athleticism, but at the end of the day, he's a pocket quarterback. And you know how you affect pocket quarterbacks the most? You get interior pressure. And so if you can stop that interior pressure, because Matthew Bergeron shows the growth, I thought his growth as a pass protector was significant last year. I want to see the same sort of level of growth as a run blocker, because that was kind of the thing when the Falcons drafted Matthew Bergeron, where we knew the strength of their run game was whenever they ran to the right side of the ball, where Lindstrom and McGarry are. And you didn't have that for many years running to the left with Jake Matthews. We know Jake Matthews is a great pass protector, but run blocking is not his forte. And so you want to kind of counterbalance that with a dominant run blocker. It's the same combination with Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry. Caleb McGarry, not a great pass protector, but a really good run blocker. And Chris Lindstrom can do it all. But it's one of those things where it's like Matthew Bergeron was billed to be the sort of balance for Jake Matthews. He's potentially the balance for Ryan Nuzul now. And so he's another guy that I think, I expect him to grow this year, but I want to see that big leap forward that we often see for offensive linemen in year 3, right? That's one of those positions that typically does not hit until the 3rd or 4th year in the NFL, because it just takes that much time to master that position. And so I think this is a big year for Matthew Bergeron, where he could be another breakout candidate. If he shows that jump, I think it does wonders for this offense.
My mind went to, but I said, oh, thanks for saving me free from being petty, because I was going to say Matthew Bergeron, but then my mind went to Caleb McGarry. And I was thinking to myself, I know that there are players that have that floor and they have that ceiling, and maybe the floor is just what it is in pass pro, but I don't know if I would call it a breakout season that we'd like to see from him in pass protection, but maybe just break out of where you are. That would be great if you could just get a breakout from where you are. So the Falcons reveal the numbers for the 2025 NFL draft class, and Jalon Walker got 11, James Pearce 27, Xavier Watts 33, Billy Bowman Jr. 33, and Jack Nelson 69. But of course, the one that was the eye opener, the head scratcher, the one that made everyone say, ooh, was the fact that the Falcons allowed Jalon Walker to get 11, and we're still just kind of on the heels of a Julio Jones retirement. So I don't know, Maria, did that make you guys feel some type of way, or did you go, huh? What? 11 is being worn already?
I don't care about jersey numbers. I'm just going to tell you that right there. Like,
you don't care what number they win.
It's like, my only opinion on jersey numbers is I don't like the Falcons numbers. The 1 and the 7 look the same. So like, the 11
that is so true. It's so annoying. I hate it.
And so like when I'm watching the film on like Monday and Tuesday, and because it's so far at angle, like I can't tell if that's a 77 or an 11. So that's my only issue with these numbers. Is just like, is that number going to look so like Xavier Watts is like 31? I think DeMarco Hellams is 37. I'm not going to be able to tell the difference between those two guys on the film at all. But that's my only issue with it. So here's what I'll say. I don't care about jersey numbers. If they want to give away, these all-time retired numbers, whatever. At the end of the day, the player has to live up to it. Like, no sweat off my back. It doesn't change the name on the jersey that I own or whatever. But I do think it is interesting to me that you hear all this stuff about, like, Julio and the Falcons aren't always haven't been in the bestest of place since his departure. Yeah. And this just kind of adds fuel to that fire where,
a little petty there.
It's just like, okay, like, if, again, I don't really care about that stuff, but like at the same time, I do understand why some people are very passionate about that, why this seems, to some people like a stab in the back, and other people, it's just, so that whole thing, if that's something that you care about, then, have at it. For me personally, I don't really care, but it does add fuel to the fire that, like, this team, and it's going to be a while before Julio gets his name into the Ring of Honor at this pace. It seems like, rather than what we saw with Matt Ryan, where it's like within a year or two of him leaving Atlanta, he was in the Ring of Honor.
Yeah, that's actually a great call. And it took me, Maria, back to, oh my God, Bijan Robinson's going to wear 7? It took me back to that being the more recent controversy about wearing a number. But when you saw that they were going to allow Jalon Walker to wear 11, I mean, how did you feel? Did you feel some type of way? Was it like, yeah, okay, but I know Julio had that number and okay, they gave it away quickly. But like Free said, it's not like we expected the Falcons to retire that number tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I just kind of was like, okay. I mean, I know that numbers mean a lot to certain players. You know, some players don't care, they really don't. But some, it's like, man, I've worn 11 since I was 3 years old. You know, some people are like that, and so, you know, if that means something to you, then okay, like I'm not going to tell you it shouldn't. You know, but to me, it's like Jalen's the one that's got to wear it. He's got to be the one that's like, well, great, I'm tied to 11 now, which we all know what that number means, you know. So for Jalon, he probably cares a little bit more than everybody else. He's probably looking like, dang, could I have not gotten another number? But no, I mean, it didn't really matter to me. I think Julio is going to be in the Ring of Honor eventually. Again, like what Aaron said, I don't think it's the immediacy of it. Clearly, being defined by what we're seeing play out in small little nuggets that the Falcons are getting us. But I think he deserves to be there too, even though there is a little bit of bad blood between Julio and the Falcons, and rightfully so. But, you know, if you're Julio. But yeah, I mean, I didn't really think much of it. I did feel a little bit for Jalon. When I saw the number, I was like, oh man, that stinks. Right. That's all he's going to think about now. And it's all he's going to hear. I also didn't think about the fact that the 1 and the 7 are so similar with this freaking franchise. And literally, like in training camp, I'm like, I don't know who that is. I got no clue, because it could be a 7, it could be a 1. It's the most annoying thing ever. So I'm glad you pointed that out. It drives me nuts. It's literally, all the Falcons fans know what we're talking about, but it's just a 0.5 millimeter away from being the same number. It's so frustrating.
And it is. And the minute you guys mentioned it was the minute I can remember several times during last season where I was like, all right, Jarvis, because we sit next to each other at games. I'm like, Jay, was that it's always that darn 7 that kind of
look. And if you're mad about the 11, tell yourself in your head it's a nasty number for that position. It's a 77.
Exactly. If that makes you feel better about yourself, then tell yourself that. But yeah, hopefully Jalon Walker will be able to diffuse any type of commentary, because A, he's on the other side of the ball, so that kind of helps out. But B, he'll show improved just the way that Bijan Robinson showed improved. Hey, like this number is actually a good look for me. We'll see. But listen, speaking of whether or not, and of course, there's always trolling that's involved in those situations. So I'm always here for the trolling, just to kind of see. But sometimes you never know if trolling gets out of control. We'll talk about that and whether or not this show would love to be on location for something that the Falcons do. Talk about it on the other side. So Michael Penix Jr. seems like the kind of guy who's not really going to get like out of his mind, upset, frustrated, or whatever. He seems like he'd take everything in stride, right? So apparently his durag is like a thing, right? Get me a durag sponsorship already. And so, you know, people love to troll about the durag. I don't think it's a big deal, Free. If that's what Michael Penix Jr. does, heck, I mean, if you want to wear a fascinator, a hoodie, I don't really give a darn what you wear. Can you just make this team win? But people are definitely in their feelings sometimes about the durag. So for you, is it a big deal? Like, are you okay with the fact that, hey, the world just seems like they want to troll QB1 about this?
I thought it was interesting watching the whole video that he did with Brian McFadden over at CBS Sports when they went to Waffle House and they went to Publix, and they talked about the do-rag. I thought it was fun that Michael Penix, you know, as someone who sometimes will get on the internet and troll people, you know, I thought it was interesting to see like Michael Penix, who's this like cool, calm, collected, poised type of guy, is like, he's having fun with it. Like everybody is obsessed with what's under the durag. And so now he's made it a game where it's like, I never take this thing off. I don't take it off in showers. I only take it off when I'm around Arthur Blank in like a very sort of public, night out. And we've heard from Michael Penix before. He says like, I don't like going out. I don't like leaving the house. So like you will rarely see him in those instances outside of like a random Hawks game every now and then. And then he only does it when he gets in the car after practice. And so like no one is able to see it other than like random passersby on the highway. And he's like, and then those people will go and like, I saw Michael Penix and he wasn't wearing his durag. And like, no, you didn't see Michael Penix not wearing his durag. So it's, to me, it's hilarious. I love it. I love the fact that like this normal sort of calm guy is having fun with this whole durag thing. And so, yeah, ultimately, if he can get, a sponsorship from, whatever company is, obviously I don't know what is the top durag company in the world, because it's been a long time since I've had to wear a durag, but like if he can get a sponsorship, great for him. But I do like the fact that he's having fun with this.
I know, right? And I think too, like you said, it's one of those where the durag, it's kind of like, oh Maria, I'm having a brain freeze about the bear for Marcel Ozuna. Yeah, like the bear's taking on a life. Yeah, exactly. Like, he's taking on a life of his own. So I feel like this is one of those situations where this durag is about to take a life of its own too. But for you, I think Free makes a great point. Nice to see QB1 just having fun with it, not feeling some type of way or getting in his feelings about it. Just saying, all right, whatever. Let's just have some fun with this.
I freaking love it. I love it because Michael is so calm and he's so like, whatever, I'm going to ride the wave and blah, blah, blah. So you're actually getting to see his personality. Like he's funny and you wouldn't normally get to see a ton of that. I think one-on-one, like away from the cameras, he probably shows a little bit more, but he's hilarious. And if you remember, this all came back to Bijan Robinson on a podcast saying like, man, I've never seen him take it off. Like when he's in the shower at the facility, like he's wearing that thing. And so then like Michael's like, all right, I'm going to have some fun with it, which to be fair, I also have not seen him with it off at the facility. Now he does take it off. He mentioned the Arthur Blank dinners, like that, the serious moments, like he'll take it off. He didn't wear one to the Hawks game. And whatever like college student is running the social media or one, like a younger person that's kind of like with it and listening to what's going on, the caption that they put on the picture of Michael without it on was durag off. And I was like, all right, this is freaking hilarious. This is like a whole thing now. So we didn't see it on then. And then his introductory press conference. So to his point, it's like the serious moments he'll take it off, but I love that he's having fun with it. I also just visualizing him getting in his car and taking it off himself is so funny to me, especially because I see a lot of these players leave the facility. Most times they beat me out of the facility. Me and the coaches, we're the last ones standing. And so I'll be doing live shots and I can see a lot of the players leaving. Like I've seen Kirk leave before and like a lot of the guys will roll their windows down. Some of them have them tinted so you don't know who's in there, but they'll have their windows down. So I just envision like with the durag off, just like arm out, like I just can't even. It's the funniest visualization to me. But no, I love it. I think it shows that Mike, he's got personality and just for a quiet guy, it's fun to see him have fun with something like that.
Yeah, it is. And now I know that the next time we're all in Flowery Branch, it's going to be like everybody's kind of looking over their shoulder. Anybody see anybody, which car he got into, which car he got out of.
Take a shot every time you see him with it off. It's so funny. We should just make it a game. Like I love it.
This is absolutely about to become like the story of the summer, the fun story of the summer. But I also thought a really fun and cool story came out from the Rams. They announced Wednesday that they are headed to Hawaii for minicamp in June. I'm like, wow, Maui, here we come was actually their tweet. So got me to thinking, if there was one place the Falcons could host minicamp, and of course, for our audience, we are selfishly thinking about this. This is all about us, the media, and what we want, just so we can have full disclosure for you guys. Where would you, Aaron, love to see the Falcons host minicamp? Because, hey, that means you'd be there too.
Yeah. Unfortunately, this is going to be my last show here because I'm going to be hosting Locked On Rams, so I can go to Maui and get a free trip. No, but when I saw that, I was like, I'm I'm covering the wrong team. That's basically what I came to the conclusion. But I think, since, the Rams are West Coast, they go to Hawaii. You want to go to someplace tropical. So here in Atlanta, you want to go to somewhere in the Caribbean. So just pick any island. I'm not going to complain about, Barbados, Bermuda, Trinidad and Tobago, Aruba, Jamaica, all of them, I want to take you, all of them, go to those islands. The Falcons. I'm all for any island in the Caribbean. Let's have minicamp there.
How about you, Maria? Where are we going?
I mean, y'all know where I'm from. I'm from Florida. So I want anywhere with a beach. Like, I'm not picky. Like, I need some water, similar to Aaron. It doesn't matter. Like, I got married in the Bahamas. I'm a big Bahamas girl. Grew up going there. It's very close to where I grew up. So the Bahamas would be great for me. Like, but again, I'm not picky. Like, anywhere you want to choose, down this way. I would like to say that Flowery Branch and Hawaii show a lot of similarities. So I don't know why you're upset. I'm totally kidding. There is nothing similar about Hawaii and Flowery Branch. So I'm getting
maybe the humidity. Maybe the humidity.
Man, I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes it feels like I'm standing on the surface of Mars when I'm out there. I've never been to Mars, but I feel like literally those fans that have been on the hill for training camp, God bless you guys, man. It is hot out there. You guys love this team because it is smelly if you're down there near the players. We're all like, I mean, you're just like sweating off all the sunscreen you have on your face. It's a mess. So I can envision Hawaii being a little bit better than Flowery Branch in the middle of July. So yeah, I mean, anywhere that has a breeze would be nice, like any kind of a wind.
Any breeze. Yeah.
Those of us in the media that have to be there all day, we've now got like little clips on our hats with fans. We have neck fans. Like it's aggressive out there. And so, yeah, I'll need a tropical breeze ASAP.
Yeah. Yeah. I tell you, I don't have to go up there nearly as often. I probably get up there, to be honest, like once a year these days, but that's all I need, because literally I'm reminded of, exactly. First of all, it is super far from anything in Atlanta. They are the Falcons. Their facility is not Atlanta. So just saying. But yeah, like, it's a beast to get up there. And then like where you said, you get there and you're like dead. Whereas I've always said this, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have figured it out, because it's really bad there too in Tampa, but they have like this L-shaped awning, and that's where media can go all day, and they just supply you with drinks on top of drinks on top of drinks and little snacks and fans and all this cutesy little stuff. And I've asked, but I haven't gotten an answer on that. Like, hey, when are y'all going to do that for us in Flowery Branch? Because we're feeling some type of way. But yeah, if I had to pick a place for us, I'm going to pick a place that, and I'm glad Free mentioned it, because I forgot about like that humidity aspect, which I shouldn't forget. I'm in New Orleans right now, for crying out loud, in the New Orleans area. What the heck? And yeah, it's like freaking 82 degrees at like 10 a.m. in the morning. But I was going to say Costa Rica, because
I would love Costa Rica.
Right? You're like, yeah, because Costa Rica is still, it can get to 90 in June, but typically it's hovering more in like the 70s, 80s space. And then we get a break at night, because the temperature typically goes down about 10 to 15 degrees. And then the humidity is only at 65%. 65%. Like,
Costa Rica is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I think we would like Costa Rica. I think we would do really, really well there.
They have saltwater crocodiles though, so they swim in the ocean. That's a little aggressive for me, but I have been to Costa Rica and I loved it.
It's a little aggressive.
It's just wow. No, I grew up around sharks. Not to derail the conversation, grew up around sharks in the ocean. Me and my best friend were going to Costa Rica for the first time, and we're Googling like which beaches to go to and whatever. And the first picture that popped up was a freaking crocodile in the middle of a wave, and I was like, "Oh, I will not be getting in there."
Yeah.
What are you doing in there?
Yeah. That's like here, being near bayous everywhere you go. Like literally, there's a bayou that runs through the town I grew up in. So yeah, you can see a random alligator at any given moment. Like you could be out there looking
at alligators, but then like surfing the waves is a problem for me.
That's a different kind. And Maria, okay, Bree, this is slightly off the rails too, but an alligator who's sitting in the daggone surf like that, like you're a bad damn gator. Like, I mean,
seriously, what are you doing? How can your legs do that? That is accomplishing way too much.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure it out. So that would be our advisory to all media. Like because we're going to claim this, by the way, when we find out that the Falcons are going to Costa Rica for minicamp, probably not this year because we would have heard it by now, but maybe next year.
Yeah.
Then we as a team will bring this show to you guys live from Costa Rica. Like Free Maria, that's what we're going to do because we care about our audience. Yeah, that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, we care.
Yeah, we're going to make Costa Rica happen. Yeah, we're going to make Costa Rica happen because we want to do that for you guys. So in actuality, it's not necessarily just selfish of the media. We love our audience that much to be able to expose them to a different type of mini camp. But yeah, I thought that was real extra, real special, real Ramsey in a good way that the Rams decided that they're going to take mini camp to Hawaii. Oh, and also real quick before we wrap up, I think just a little bit of seriousness, I also think that's good for the league because we talk about the success of moving the draft around. And I think that this is that type of thing where maybe if teams start to decide, hey, we'll take our mini camp to a remote location, I think that could actually be a valuable piece for the league as it continues to grow internationally. So as much as I'm making a joke about Costa Rica, that is an international destination that could continue to help the league to grow by allowing other fans outside of the US to be able to see some of these players up front. They may not ever be able to catch a game. They may not ever be able to fly to the US to catch a game. But if you bring the game to them, even if it's just a mini camp, I think that would actually be a super cool thing for the league as it continues to try to build or expand its international footprint. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Atlanta Football Party your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Falcons with your host, Aaron Freeman. As your second listen, check out Maria Martin, host of Sports Extra on Sundays on 11 Live, and our guy Jarvis, who is a frequent contributor for Locked On Falcons and Sports Extra. We'll be back next week. See you then.